Hey, real quick, before we get into that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any marketing nuggets. Enjoy the show.
Our audience is welcome to send us things that they would like to see in the newsletter, whether it's young professional profiles, which is the thing that we've done, or it's just talking just like a straight feature on an event. I think what keeps people coming back is the fact that they have a say in what we are promoting.
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. Today, I'm joined by none other than the fabulous, the wonderful David T. Baker.
Thank you for
writer,
having me.
content creator, content manager at 50 Forward. Fantastic having you in.
Thanks. Glad to be here, finally.
Finally.
We get to sit down and, catch up and then also talk business.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad that you're finally here as well. It's been a long time in the making, and now you're finally here. And we're here to talk about 50 Forward, and in specific, talk about event marketing, that specifically, something that you have been excelling at. I feel like seeing your efforts go out there.
Thank you.
Big attendances. 50 Forward's a long-standing brand in the city. So it's such a, something that you really have to keep feeding that engine and growing. But I guess where to start is, what really, for 50 Forward events, what sets them apart and, what makes them so successful here in the New Orleans community?
Ooh, interesting question. I think it is a mix of things, consistency, as you just pointed out, and then there's also 50 Forward stepped up during a period of time where New Orleans was coming back, and there was a bit of a question like, what's there for young professionals? So 50 Forward stepped up to fill that niche, and everything we do starts with that initial thought of what can we do for young professionals in the city, what's not there, what are they looking for, how can we keep them there, and how can we recruit more people to come to town?
Yeah, and I guess, too, when you've been doing it recently, have you kind of noticed, especially like kind of catering the events, like you're mentioning, what's the landscape currently? Like, what are you kind of like seeing, things that you think are better for the events currently going on in New Orleans?
In terms of, ask me that question again.
So, I think what's interesting because events are so curated to like the ebbs and flows of what people want to see. What do you think people want to see events-wise in New Orleans?
Interests are just so varied. And there's an organization for everything now. So I think people definitely want to see a lot of entertainment and a lot of, it's very interesting. People here want things that are not so specific to New Orleans, but are also so unique. Like they want the experiences to be very unique.
Yeah.
But the events and then the offerings to be very global. So balancing that is what's a fun challenge, and sometimes it can be hit or miss, which is why we do surveying.
Well, that's good. Yeah, surveying is always important. We always talk about that, and I guess too, I'm always curious too. Like when you're in there and you're starting to think about an event, and you're on that, you're thinking about it from a content perspective. I guess what kind of strategy you're thinking to promote it. What are you using to like really? What are your methods, I guess, to your madness to get those attendance numbers up?
Well, we try to meet people where they are. Not everyone's using social media, so we try to be very diverse in our outreach. 50 Forward primarily, or at least that's when it started, was primarily a newsletter that would go out weekly. Right now, it's about a bi-weekly newsletter because that adapted based on, the analytics, like what you get back. How often are people opening this? How many unsubscribes are we getting on the basis of just sheer volume? It used to be 2 per week, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So that got dialed back. So it's everything that we do, it's going out in the newsletter first. And then we move from there to social media. It goes to Facebook for the group that is still using Facebook, but aren't necessarily on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, which we don't actually even use right now. We don't use TikTok. Not yet. We're going to see how this goes
all right.
before
Okay.
we move into that arena.
This podcast? Well, if this podcast goes well, then you'll do TikTok?
Well, just like the trends.
No.
We will
Yeah.
get on TikTok for you.
Oh, wow. All right.
Is
Heard
that
it
the
here
main
first.
camera?
That's the wide camera, and this
Yeah.
is your close-up. So if you want to, like,
We will get
Yeah.
on TikTok for you.
nice.
We might.
Gotcha. I love it.
I don't know how fun this is supposed to be. So.
It's as fun as we make it. You know what I'm saying? You do it. We do it. We do it live. But we're not live. But, you know.
Okay, great.
We're alive. Is
Great.
what I'm
We
trying
can
to say.
do a lot of
You're alive.
editing of this then.
But you know, I guess too, you were mentioning like unsubscribes versus subscribes. I think too, everybody is always trying to make sure they have strong newsletters.
Mhm.
What does that kind of look like to you as far as for especially kind of like pushing for events, pushing for what 504 does?
Well, a big boon for us has always been our audience is welcome to send us things that they would like to see in the newsletter, whether it's young professional profiles, which is the thing that we've done, or it's just talking just like a straight feature on an event that's not our event. It could be anything. We've done a lot of support of other organizations, promoting their things, letting people know when they need volunteers. We've done giveaways on social media. We've done them through the newsletter. I think what keeps people coming back is the fact that they have a say in what we are promoting. So that's been helpful. I forgot the other end of your question.
Well,
I don't get interviewed a lot, y'all.
what are you talking about? You don't even think don't whatever that thought is. Get it out of your head right now. I don't even. We don't even want to think about that thought. So, you know, you coming at it from a writer, I think as well.
Mhm.
You know, I'm kind of curious. From as a writer, you know, when you're writing this copy, you know, what are some of the things that you bring to the table from the promotional perspective as a writer, kind of impacting the way that the messaging gets out there?
Well, I go with the standard journalism form: who, what, where, when, why. It's important to grab people in that first graph, and then everything that comes after that just expands on what is already at the top. Like, you know the details. We already know what it is. I'm telling you why it is or how. And I think that's what people are primarily interested in, is knowing how did we get here and what comes next. So I like to incorporate that into every newsletter that we send out and to any social media post that we put out. I write the social media post to complement what's happening in the newsletter. So that keeps people engaged. We've gotten some really great feedback about the content in the newsletter since then. I actually changed up the editorial calendar to make sure that it's more reflective of all of New Orleans. And plan it around the schedule of things that are happening in the mainstream media. Like, there's going to be MLK Day celebrations, Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month. We do things on Tet Fest. And then the things that are more general to people, like New Orleans Wine and Food Experience, might be in there. Or, honestly, we were talking earlier when we went upstairs about Film Fest. That's usually a feature. And then from there, like, you know that Film Fest is happening, and then you can boil it down to very specific things. Like, here are the films that are being produced by Louisiana or New Orleans filmmakers. And then following up with some form of party, because people like to go to parties, and that's always included. Or White Linen Night, which for us is a pretty big night because we have our own thing that happens that night, but then there's also the opportunity to showcase it as an event to highlight not just Edna, who puts it on, but the gallery owners, the individual artists. So being able to connect it to something more than just, or writing about it in a way that's more than just, hey, this party is happening, and being able to tell people, here's why this is happening, I think has been impactful for the newsletter.
And that's what's, so how, and you know, the cadence of your newsletter, what is that cadence usually?
It's very conversational, at least as I've been told.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Someone wrote back, I feel like I'm talking to a friend. I was like, oh, well, that's very helpful, stranger.
Oh, you got friends in the building. All right. Okay.
Yeah, we try to keep it at a nice, steady pace. It's meant to be read within like a 3 to 5 minute read, at the longest 5 minutes. But really, I'll flip if I can get it down to it 1 to 3 minutes. But depending on what the subject matter is, because we'll include other things like, here's some job opportunities, or this are the organizations having this. They're looking for volunteers if you're interested in participating. Showcases on like companies like this will say, hey, if you are a content creator and you're looking to find a studio space. Now there's what's Elevate is out here. Honestly, this would be a really
Elation.
good feature. Elation is out here. So
But we get elevated at Elation.
get elevated at Elation.
Mm-hmm.
So the main content is a 1 to 3 minute read, and then whatever comes after that is maybe 2 minutes longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and the reason why I'm curious about that too is because I'm always curious, and I think a lot of people don't know this, which is something that I'm curious what you think about. How soon do you need to start promoting an event?
I do have an answer for that.
Yeah, like what's the best timeline? Because I feel like sometimes people are just like, all right, my event's next week and go. And then everyone's like, well, I already got plans.
I think there is that is an interesting dance. I think depending on what you're the goal on that promotion, if you're promoting to get sponsors, that needs to start months in advance. I would dare even say a year if it's an annual event. For volunteers, it's kind of around the same time that you want to start promoting to get your sponsors in the door. But for actual attendees, I would say a month out at least. In any other city, I feel like it would be a bit more lead time. Here, people seem to make decisions about whether or not they're going to something the night before it actually is happening. So,
there's just so much going on, you know.
Right.
My life's busy. I don't know what I'm doing, you know.
I'll give you an example. For Whiteland Night, we brought back 504's always hosted this party, or at least since 2012. There was this party that used to happen at the Children's Museum that we used to call I think it was called the Connections Party.
Oh, okay.
Previously.
Nice.
This year, this
Easy
was my
name.
first year actually being involved on the planning end of it with my colleague, Catherine Schindler, who at some point I'm sure will come by and talk to y'all.
Nice.
She's a staple at those events. You probably met her, very bubbly, brown hair. She's always got the jokes, and she always has like the itinerary in hand. Like she knows what's happening that day.
I need someone like that in my life. You know?
She's very organized.
Yeah.
So we started promoting. We wanted to wait until Adno actually put out an official like press release about the fact that this was happening. It was August 3rd. We started planning this maybe in June. And we reached out to our sponsors early on through June and July. And the tickets went live on Eventbrite in July. And sales were going, well, relatively slow, Catherine would say. But the event was different from what it was. Like I rebranded it the Cool and Connected Party to play on the heat of the night, like the actual temperature.
Yeah.
And these things that happen during White Linen Night called cool rooms, where it's like you pay $20 and you can go into an air-conditioned place.
Oh, nice.
And there's usually a bar set up and music or something. That's effectively what our party was.
Yeah.
So we were branded as something that you can come, be connected, network with friends, or meet new people.
Yeah.
Hear some music, have some food, and have some drinks, and just like have a party while also not standing outside in 98-degree weather.
Yeah.
So you would think that would be enough of an appeal, and it was, but people needed to really know what else was happening that weekend before they made the decision, because they knew White Linen Night was happening, but the sales didn't really bump up until literally the week before.
Wow.
Because we went suddenly from the initial like 20 to 30 or however many tickets we had done in those prior weeks to suddenly about 200 in a week, and then by the next week we'd hit like 300 or 400 because we set a limit.
Yeah.
And then we wound up cutting the ticket sales off the night before, and then still had to sell tickets at the door.
Wow.
So I wouldn't measure it, at least on a global scale, from what happens in New Orleans. And as far as like the lead time for promotion, I would just always go with 2 to 3 months in advance. From a media perspective, you want at least 2 weeks prior to the event for that outlet to confirm that they will be sending someone, and that you can send a photographer, make sure you have all of your setup if you're a news station and you need a certain amount of space for cables and camera equipment. So a month at the very least.
At the very least.
A month at least.
Well, because like my thing about it, and this is what I'm definitely curious about, is because I think I've heard that phenomena quite a few times. Like we've been involved in events and just the mad dash. Everybody's like, tickets aren't selling. And then like, okay, wait a second. We're okay.
Right.
And it's like, but like, I think a lot of that too is the phenomena of, but you need to have that event out there because these people, while they may be making the decisions last minute,
Right.
they've known about it for a
Yes,
while.
they do make a note of it.
Yeah. And so that's important for them to know going
Right.
into that, to be like as well informed leading into it as possible.
It is important. I'll get early confirmation from people just saying, "Hey, I know that I'm coming to this. I just haven't bought my ticket yet." I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
Ticket sales cut off at this date, so just so we're both informed.
Be there.
Right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, well, I mean, and so really too, as a these events too, how do they impact the community at large? Like how do events like the ones that 504 puts on
Mhm.
really develop community engagement and and help 504 achieve the goals that it's set out to do?
One way is that we work in partnership with a lot of other community-based organizations. Like we do a lot with Young Leadership Council, ULI now, well, through our larger organization,
Mm-hmm.
NOLA Business Alliance, which owns 504.
Mm,
The Hispanic Chamber. We've done things with YEP and other groups that are very much on the ground doing this type of work. So we'll either do what we can to boost their promotions or pull in volunteers for them, things like that. The events that we do are meant to specifically help impact quality of life or the perception of quality of life for young and emerging professionals in the area. So like we'll put on dinners in which we'll invite industry leaders to come out and be
mm,
what we call connectors at the dinner table
mm,
so that they can sit with people who may already have jobs but maybe looking to change industry or looking to change companies because they need to make a move in order to grow.
mhm,
Just to talk to them about their career paths, how they got there, and just like map out for them a way forward and to help convince them to stay in New Orleans. And another aspect of that is like we host these events at local businesses. So
mm,
we'll go to restaurants and then the economic impact of that
mm,
for us spending money there. So we'll prepay for the events.
mhm,
They're usually ticketed, particularly the restaurant nights
mhm,
are ticketed. We'll work out a prefix menu for them, which will include like a cocktail. And we'll typically pick a slow night for the restaurant. We'll just ask them, like, what's your slowest night? When can you use the business?
mm,
We just make the arrangements. It's like basically us organizing a dinner party for you,
mhm.
except you get paid for it. As the restaurant, you
Yeah.
get paid for it. So
Right.
there's that economic impact. It's making it worth it for them to be
Mm,
open either that day or 2 or 3 hours extra that
mhm,
night and not have to worry about whether or not you'll have customers because you know that you will. So there's an
mhm,
economic impact to that. And then the social impact is come to our event. We're promoting this on behalf of somebody else. They may get involved with that other organization. So there's this ripple effect of social good that's happening
mm.
when they go and volunteer.
Awesome. And I guess, I think that that's all things that, especially the events that you guys are putting on, really do fire on all cylinders. I guess it's like a
I
no-brainer for a
go.
lot of people, but I guess, to wrap it up here too is, so that people that are hearing this and, because everybody's trying, I mean, events are
Mhm.
things that everybody's trying to do, always trying to
Right.
make better. From what you've learned from like a marketing perspective, and what are some of the things that you would tell people, to the do's and don'ts, I guess, like the tips that you give them
Oh.
when it comes to that, things that you've kind of in the trenches learned, like, hey, make sure you're doing, I mean, we talked about timing, but like,
Mhm.
other things that might be like important for them to know.
The planning or the marketing of it.
The marketing.
Okay. It's important to understand your audience and what they're looking for. The messaging is very
Yeah.
important because you have to communicate with different communities in different ways. Meeting them where they are.
Hmm.
If they don't have social media, it's not their primary way of information gathering. You can't just rely on that. So, which is why we continue to put out the newsletter. And we'll even go some even more traditional routes of like for White Linen Night, and is the thing we'll be doing moving forward is reaching out to traditional media outlets to spread the word through that. We've used it as an opportunity not only to promote the events, but I can even call back to when the pandemic first hit and we had to redo this editorial calendar. One thing that came up, and honestly, I was just maybe 3 months in to doing this
Yeah.
for 504 when all the events got canceled and we had to we redid the editorial calendar, and it's like everything now is going to be just online content, and we'll do what we can virtually. So what we did was reach out to some groups who were hosting professional development opportunities, which is a thing that we do organize, but this particular one, people needed jobs. So went out, and I think it was WWL worked with to do a segment with them just to spread the word, not only about 504, but about how you can navigate the pandemic while looking for a job. So that got aired. So that was a very impactful way to also communicate with an audience who may not be checking emails, or they get such a volume of them that they're not doing it in a timely way. And now that if you have Gmail, they separate them into folders. There's like the most important, and then there's promotion, and then there's another tab, social or something. Yeah.
Updates, I think is one of them.
Right. So if you're not going through and checking all those tabs, that was another way for people to have found out about it. Because then it's going out through the news through their main focus, whether it's like a print publication or it's on air, whether radio or TV. It's also going on their social media and their newsletters. So it's important to be as diverse as possible when you are trying to market to a bunch of audiences. And it's important to like do audience segmentation, like this audience primarily responds to this, and follow your analytics. See what the numbers are telling you.
What are the numbers telling you, man? Got to drop that out. And, do you ever like have ambassadors, like try and get people that are like more movers and shakers to show up and like?
We do. We call them connectors.
Connectors, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so it'll either be a mix of, like I said, the industry leaders who will either come to the dinners, or we do this thing called Dine Around, in which we'll get these leaders to host dinners in their homes for members of 504. There's like a process for it. We send it out. You sign up under one of the categories of what you're primarily interested in. You get 3 choices. So you can choose from a list of, I think there are maybe 20 categories, and they're all based around profession. So it's either economic development or cultural arts or education or healthcare or something like that. And then we try to pair you up with the appropriate group. There are usually 10 people, I think, max at these dinners. We want to make it manageable for the host, and we want to be able to ask them again.
Yeah. Let's make this a good relationship.
Right. So we asking people is like, don't get there and just go wild.
Yeah.
We'll party afterwards. Yeah. But for this dinner, like maybe just this is your opportunity to have an intimate conversation with somebody you would like to get advice from. So yeah, that's one of our ways of marketing, and those people then become ambassadors. So, and then as our membership, well, we call it membership, but subscribership grows, people who have been involved for the past 12 years, as they move out of the group of people who maybe need to connect with these these industry leaders or influencers in whatever regard, they can then become that next generation. So when we get new signups for kids who are coming out of college and entering the workforce, we can repeat that process.
Nice.
So it's an ever-expanding web.
Just growing and growing. I love it. Fantastic. Well,
Thank you.
if there are people out there that for some reason haven't heard of 504 and they want to get plugged in, and I'm not looking at just anybody out here in particular.
We're looking at you.
Where can they find 504 and get plugged in, and where can they find you? If they, just love what you're just talking about, and they want to, just get to just connect with David.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I would dare say probably at a party, but
hey, you go to parties? You partying out there?
Well, so you can go to the 504 website. It's 504ward.com. And from there, you can sign up for our newsletter. And then our socials are all listed there. We actively use Facebook as part of promotion because you can set up events. Instagram, which is probably the most active when it comes to promotions because it's easier to share things. We can do social media giveaways on there, which we do fairly frequently, whether it's for something we're hosting or for another organization. Twitter and LinkedIn, which is a very good resource for anybody in the workforce who are either looking for new jobs or just looking to connect on a business level. So you can find me on Instagram as THADFLY, and on LinkedIn, it's just David T. Baker, I believe.
David T. Baker. Well, thank you so much, David T. Baker, for
coming in.
Thank you for
having me.
And we'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This episode of Make Marketing Make Sense is brought to you by Comfystone. If your business needs organic social media video content, video ads, or video podcasting, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, this is Make Marketing Make Sense.